Jimo stared at the empty driveway, her hands shaking. Her car, her first car, a gift she had worked years for, was gone. Her father didn't even ask. He had sold it to pay her brother's gambling debt. Her little brother, Neba, shrugged like it was nothing. Her mother looked away silent. And in that moment, Jimo realized something terrifying. The family she had trusted all her life, the home she grew up in, didn't care about her dreams. If they can take everything from me today, she whispered, then I can take back everything from them tomorrow. Jimo had always been the kind of girl who worked hard for everything she owned. While others spent their weekends relaxing, she worked part-time jobs, studied late into the night, and saved every bit she could. When she finally bought her first car, it wasn't just a vehicle to her. It was her reward, her proof that effort pays off. Every time she sat behind the wheel, she felt free, proud, and in control of her life. But one morning, she walked outside and found the driveway empty. Her car was gone. Confused, she ran inside, only to hear her father's calm voice say, "I sold it. Your brother needed help." For a moment, she couldn't even breathe. "You sold my car?" she asked, hoping she had heard wrong. Her father didn't even look guilty. "Family comes first," he said firmly. Her brother, Neba, shrugged like it was nothing, and her mother stood silently in the corner, eyes avoiding Jimo's. The room felt colder than ever. Jimo's heart sank as she realized that everything she had done for her family meant nothing. She had paid bills, helped with groceries, contributed to fixing the roof, all without being asked. But when it came to her turn to be respected, they treated her like she didn't matter. It wasn't just about the car. It was about being betrayed by the people she trusted the most. She went to her room and closed the door, tears slipping down her face. The car had taken her years to earn, but they took it from her in one night. Sitting in the dark, she whispered to herself, "If they can take everything from me without asking, then I'll take back my life without warning." In that quiet moment, something inside her changed. Jimo wiped her tears and stared at the wall, her mind already planning. She was done begging for respect, done being the responsible daughter who got nothing in return. Her family had made it clear that love came with conditions, and she was ready to live without theirs. That night, she promised herself she would never again let anyone decide her worth. She didn't know exactly how, but deep inside, she knew this was the beginning of her freedom. For days, Jimo couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her father's face when he said, "Family comes first." Those words burned inside her. Family, to him, meant sacrifice for her brother. But to her, it had always meant giving without being seen. She had worked hard to keep that house standing. Every time the roof leaked, she paid a part of the repair. When the kitchen needed new tiles, it was her savings that helped. Even when her father struggled with bills, she quietly sent money home. Yet no one ever thanked her. They just took and took, as if she owed them her whole life. One evening, while sitting alone in her small room, she opened her laptop and began to search for property records. She wanted to know how much the family house was worth. What she found shocked her. The house was worth far more than she ever imagined. It was her father's biggest asset, his pride, his proof of success. But Jimo knew the truth. That house had her fingerprints all over it. Her time, her money, her effort. Without her, it wouldn't have been what it was. Her hands trembled as a daring thought entered her mind. If her father could sell something that belonged to her without asking, why couldn't she do the same to him? He took her car and called it Helping Family. Maybe now, she would teach them what it felt like to lose something they valued. But Jimo wasn't thinking of revenge. She was thinking of survival, of freedom. She wanted to disappear, to start a new life where no one could use her kindness again. She spent weeks planning everything quietly. She studied legal ways to sell a property under certain conditions. She learned how to handle papers, find a buyer, and move money safely. Every step she took was careful, calm, and smart. She didn't talk to anyone, didn't share her plans. Her parents thought she was just quiet because she was still upset about the car. They didn't know she was preparing to leave them behind forever. At night, she would stand by her window, staring at the lights of other houses. She imagined a life where no one would take what was hers. A place where she could finally breathe without fear. She wasn't running away out of anger. She was running toward peace. The decision was made. She would sell the house, take her share, and vanish without a trace. The night Jimo disappeared, the rain poured without stopping. It felt as if the sky itself was crying with her, washing away the last pieces of the life she was leaving behind. She sat in the back seat of a small car parked near the old neighborhood office, her heart beating fast as she signed the final papers. The buyer was a quiet, trustworthy man she had found through a legal agent. He didn't ask many questions, only confirmed the documents twice before handing her the envelope. Inside it was the money, clean, official, and enough to start a new life. For the first time in years, Jimo felt power in her hands, not fear. When she returned home, the house was silent. Her father was asleep in the sitting room, his half-finished drink beside him. Her mother had gone to bed early after another argument about bills. Nebo wasn't home. He had gone to a friend's party, probably spending money he didn't have. The same house that once felt warm and full of life now felt like a stranger's place. Cold, heavy, and full of memories that no longer meant anything. Jimo walked slowly from room to room, looking at everything for the last time. The family photos on the wall, the couch she once slept on during study nights, the kitchen she used to clean after everyone ate. Every corner whispered stories of the girl who gave too much and received too little. She didn't cry this time. She had no tears left, only calm determination. She went to her room, packed her small suitcase, and tucked the documents safely inside. On the kitchen table, she placed a folded letter. It wasn't long, just a few honest lines. I hope you all learn what it means to respect someone who gave everything. No anger, no insults, only truth. It was her final goodbye to the people who taught her how painful love could be. Before leaving, she took one last look around. The rain outside had softened, and the wind carried the scent of wet soil. She stepped out quietly, locking the door behind her. The keys, which once represented home, now meant nothing. She slipped them into the mailbox and walked away without turning back. By morning, when her parents woke up, Jimo was already far away. Her phone was switched off, her room empty, her bank account cleared. No one knew where she went or how she managed it. The neighbors said they saw her walking toward the bus station late that night, carrying only one bag and an umbrella. To her family, she had simply vanished, like a ghost. But to Jimo, it wasn't disappearance. It was freedom. For the first time, she wasn't running from pain, she was running toward her peace, her future, her new beginning. Jimo arrived in the city with one suitcase, a little money, and a heart full of hope. Everything around her was new. The tall buildings, the busy roads, the noise of traffic and laughter mixed together. It was nothing like her old town, where everyone knew her name and her family's problems. Here she was nobody. And for the first time, that felt like freedom. She rented a tiny apartment on the top floor of an old building. It had only one window and a small balcony, but to her it felt like paradise. She cleaned the dusty floor, placed her suitcase in the corner, and smiled. "This is my space," she whispered. The first few weeks were hard. She had to learn how to live alone, how to manage her time, and how to stretch every coin. She cooked simple meals, sometimes just bread and tea, but she didn't mind. Every morning, she woke up without anyone shouting her name or asking for favors. There were no arguments, no guilt, no disappointment, only peace. One day, while walking past a small shop, she saw a green plant sitting outside. Something about it caught her heart. She bought it and took it home, naming it Neba. It wasn't after her brother, but as a reminder of growth, something that could start small and still bloom beautifully with care. Jimo also decided to do something for herself, something she had always dreamed of, but never had the courage to start. She enrolled in a night course for interior design. She loved colors, shapes, and creating beauty in spaces that felt empty. Maybe because she was also rebuilding herself from emptiness. During the day, she worked part-time at a boutique architectural firm. It wasn't easy. She started as an assistant, making coffee, filing documents, and cleaning tables. But she watched, listened, and learned. Every sketch on the desk fascinated her. Every project inspired her to dream bigger. Her boss noticed her dedication and started giving her small tasks, arranging color samples, helping with layout ideas, and preparing presentations. Each day, she grew more confident. Her nights were long, filled with studying and sketching. Her mornings started with sunlight falling on her little plant, and she always smiled, whispering, We're growing, Niba. Slowly, but we're growing. Months passed, and her tiny apartment began to reflect her new life. Simple, peaceful, full of dreams. The city that once felt strange had become her safe place. She was still far from where she wanted to be, but she was free. For the first time in years, Jumo felt alive, strong, and proud of herself. Not because someone said so, but because she finally believed it. Months passed, and Jumo was finally starting to feel settled in her new life. She had a small routine she loved: work in the morning, classes at night, and quiet evenings with her plant and music. Her days were peaceful, her heart lighter than ever. But one afternoon, her phone rang while she was leaving work. The voice on the other end introduced himself as a debt collector. "We're calling regarding an unpaid balance on Niba's credit card," he said firmly. The name made her freeze. For a moment, she couldn't even speak. Niba, her brother. Somehow, his mess had found her, even after she had left everything behind. The man went on, saying she was listed as a reference and might be responsible for repayment. Jumo's chest tightened. Old fear tried to creep back, the same helpless feeling she had whenever her family's problems became hers. But this time, she wasn't that same girl anymore. She took a deep breath and calmly asked the man to send proof of what he was claiming. When the documents arrived, she read every line carefully, just as she had learned in her office job. And what she discovered made her angry but stronger. Her brother had used her old address and her name without permission. Instead of crying or panicking, Jumo acted. She gathered her payslips, her ID, her new lease, and all the evidence proving she had no link to that card. She went to the Consumer Protection Office and filed a report. For the first time in her life, she stood up for herself legally, without asking anyone for help. It wasn't easy. She had to wait in long lines, explain her story over and over, and face people who didn't care much. But she didn't give up. She had lost too much once before. This time, she was fighting for her peace. Weeks later, she received an official letter confirming the issue had been cleared. She wasn't responsible for any of her brother's debt. The relief that washed over her was something she had never felt before. She smiled, holding the letter close, realizing this was more than just a victory. It was proof that she could protect herself, no matter what came her way. That evening she returned home, watered her little plant and whispered, "We did it." She knew more challenges would come, but she also knew she wasn't the weak, scared girl her family once controlled. She had learned to stand on her own, and that strength, she would never let anyone take away again. One evening after her classes, Jumo was working her usual shift at a small cafe near the design school. It wasn't a fancy place, but she liked it there. The soft lights, the quiet music, and the smell of coffee made her feel at peace. When the rush of customers ended, she sat at a corner table, pulled out her sketchbook, and began drawing ideas for a future project, a dream she kept close to her heart, opening her own small design studio one day. As she drew, a man sitting nearby noticed her work. He looked about her age, dressed simply but with confidence. After a while he walked over and smiled. "You're really talented," he said, pointing to her sketches. Jumo looked up, a bit surprised. No one had ever noticed her work like that before. "Thank you," she replied softly. He introduced himself as Dara, an investor who worked with young entrepreneurs. They started talking, and she showed him a few more of her ideas. Room layouts, furniture designs, and color plans she had created during her night classes. Dara listened carefully, asking thoughtful questions about her concepts. He didn't just compliment her drawings. He talked about how she could turn them into a business. Jumo was amazed. No one had ever spoken to her about her dreams seriously before. Everyone in her past had only seen her as someone responsible or useful, never as someone capable of building something on her own. Dara, however, saw her potential. Over the next few weeks, they met often, sometimes at the cafe, sometimes in the park. Dara shared his knowledge about business, branding, and how to present creative ideas to clients. He explained how to write contracts, how to price design work, and how to protect her creations. Jumo listened carefully, taking notes like a student who had just found the teacher she always needed. His advice gave her direction, and his belief in her gave her courage. Slowly, she started applying what she learned. She created a small online portfolio of her best work. Dara helped her design a simple logo, and taught her how to approach clients professionally. Her confidence grew with every step. She began to believe that maybe her dream wasn't too big after all. Unlike her family, Dara never tried to control her or make her feel small. He respected her opinions and pushed her to trust her own abilities. One night, as she closed her sketchbook, Jimo realized something. She finally had someone in her life who didn't take from her, but instead helped her grow. It wasn't love or luck, it was respect, the kind she had always deserved. Years passed, and Jimo's life had completely changed. The girl who once cried over losing her car was now the proud owner of a successful design studio. Her name started appearing in magazines and online articles about creative entrepreneurs. She designed offices, hotels, and homes for big clients, each project more beautiful than the last. The small sketches she once made in a cafe had turned into a thriving business. She had her own team, her own office, and even bought a sleek penthouse apartment with tall glass windows that overlooked the city. Every corner of it was her design, elegant, warm, and peaceful. But as her success grew, so did the whispers from her past. One day, a journalist mentioned her name in an article about self-made women who rebuilt their lives from nothing. That story traveled quickly, even reaching her old neighborhood. People there began to talk. "Did you hear about Jimo?" they asked. "She's rich now, has her own company." Soon after, her family found out too. The same people who once ignored her messages and dismissed her pain suddenly wanted to reconnect. It started with a simple text from her mother. "We're proud of you, Jimo. Can we talk?" Then came her father's call, full of awkward pauses and guilt. Her brother Niba sent the longest message of all, apologizing, saying he was young and foolish when he caused her pain. But not all the messages were kind. Some included hints of demand. "We are family," her father reminded her. "You wouldn't have made it without us." Those words made her heart tighten, but not with sadness, with clarity. Jimo sat in her office that evening, reading through each message one by one. The view of the city lights reflected in her window as she thought about everything she had gone through. The betrayal, the loneliness, the sleepless nights, and the courage it took to rebuild her life. She realized she owed her success to no one but herself. Every bit of progress came from her own strength. She picked up her phone, typed a single reply, and sent it to her family group chat. "Everything I built for me, not for you." After that, she turned off her phone and looked around her penthouse. It was quiet, but this time, it wasn't an empty kind of quiet. It was peace. She had finally reached the place she always dreamed of. Not just a home of her own, but a life where she was free from anyone who once made her feel small. One morning, Jimo opened her email and saw a message that made her heart pause. It was from Niba, her brother. The same brother whose debt had cost her everything years ago. His words were desperate. He said he had lost his job, fallen into debt again, and didn't know where else to turn. He begged her to help him, promising that he had changed. For a long moment, Jimo just stared at the screen. Old memories came flooding back. The empty driveway, her father's betrayal, her mother's silence. The pain was still there, somewhere deep inside, but now it met something stronger, calm strength. Her first instinct was anger. She wanted to ignore him, to let him face the same helplessness she once felt. It would have been easy to block him, to send a sharp message, to remind him how he had never cared about her feelings. But as she sat there, looking at his words, another feeling began to grow, compassion. She realized revenge wouldn't heal her. She had already won in the most important way, by building a life that no one could take away from her. So instead of sending him money, Jimo replied with something simple yet powerful. "I can't give you money," she wrote, "but I can teach you how to rebuild." At first, Niba didn't understand. He was expecting an easy solution, a quick transfer, not advice. But Jimo stood firm. She invited him to visit her studio, not as a brother asking for help, but as someone willing to learn. When he arrived, he looked ashamed and nervous. It had been years since they had seen each other. Jimo welcomed him politely and handed him a folder filled with business notes. She began teaching him how to manage money, create budgets, and plan his goals. He listened quietly, sometimes too embarrassed to look her in the eyes. Day by day, she showed him the same discipline she had once used to build her own life. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about showing him the right way. Months later, Niba got a small job managing accounts at a local store. He thanked Jimo for her guidance, saying she had given him something more valuable than money, direction. Jimo smiled, knowing this was her real victory. She had turned her pain into wisdom, and instead of letting bitterness win, she had chosen peace. That night as she sat by her window, she realized true power wasn't about payback. It was about staying kind and strong, even when you had every reason not to be. Jimo's little studio, which had once been a corner of her tiny apartment, grew into something remarkable. Her designs were bold, fresh, and full of life. She transformed small spaces into warm, inviting homes and turned ordinary offices into places that inspired creativity. Word spread quickly, and soon clients from all over the city, and even other towns, wanted her work. Every project she completed added to her reputation. People began to notice not just her talent, but the story behind her talent. The girl who had vanished from her family home and built something incredible from nothing. Magazines ran articles about her, calling her the woman who reclaimed her life and built her dreams. Television interviews followed. On camera, she always smiled gently, sharing her experiences without bitterness, explaining how hard work, determination, and belief in herself had shaped her life. Journalists were captivated not only by her creativity, but also by the courage it took to leave behind a life that no longer valued her. Every story emphasized that Jimo had turned betrayal into fuel for her success. Soon invitations came pouring in. She was asked to speak on panels about entrepreneurship and design. She attended charity events, sometimes mentoring young women who had been through similar family struggles. They would sit around her, eyes wide, as she spoke about taking control of your own life and standing strong even when others let you down. She never boasted about what she had taken from her family. She focused on what she had created for herself. The women she inspired left those events feeling lighter, braver, and more determined to face their own challenges. Social media picked up her story quickly. Her interviews and articles were shared thousands of times, and soon millions of people around the world had seen her journey. Comments flooded in, messages of support, admiration, and gratitude from people who had felt overlooked, undervalued, or betrayed. Many said her story gave them hope that they too could rise above hardship. Others shared their own struggles, thanking her for showing that it was possible to turn pain into achievement. Even though she had once been invisible in her own home, Jimo could no longer be ignored. Her name became a symbol of resilience, strength, and independence. She realized her success was not just measured in money or fame, but in the lives she touched and inspired. The girl who had once felt powerless had become a force that the world could see, hear, and feel. And every time she looked around her busy studio, bustling with projects and creativity, she felt proud, not because she had proven anyone wrong, but because she had finally built a life that was entirely hers. One afternoon, as Jimo was reviewing a new project in her bright studio, the receptionist told her someone was waiting to see her. She looked up and was surprised to see her mother standing nervously at the doorway. Her mother's face was pale, her hands twisting a scarf, eyes full of apology. She stepped in slowly, looking around at the bustling office, the sketches on the walls, and the busy team moving efficiently. Jimo felt a small flutter of old memories, but it was nothing compared to the calm she had built inside herself over the years. Her mother hesitated, then spoke softly. Jimo, I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. For the car, the arguments, the times we didn't see you. Her voice trailed off, and for a moment, Jimo thought she might cry. But she didn't. Not anymore. She had already faced the pain, turned it into strength, and created a life no one could take from her. She stood, walked to her mother, and with a gentle smile handed her a cup of tea. I've forgiven, but I've also moved on, Jimo said quietly, her voice steady and calm. There was no anger, no bitterness, only clarity. She didn't need her mother's approval or validation. She didn't need anyone from her past to acknowledge her worth. That chapter of her life, filled with control, entitlement, and betrayal, was closed. She had let it go, not because they deserved forgiveness, but because she deserved peace. Her mother looked at her, a mixture of relief and sadness in her eyes. She nodded slowly, understanding that Jimo was no longer the girl who had waited silently for recognition. Her father, brother, and sister were all distant memories now, shadows of a past that could no longer reach her. They had tried to control her, take from her, and diminish her, but she had outgrown their influence completely. Jumo turned back to her office, watching her team work, the sunlight spilling over the sketches and models she had created. She felt the full weight of freedom, the satisfaction of knowing she had built everything with her own hands, her own mind and her own heart. No one could take it away, and no one could ever define her value again. She had created a life of independence, respect, and self-reliance, a life where she was in charge of her own destiny. For the first time in years, she breathed fully, completely, and without fear. The past was gone, and the future was hers. She had forgiven, moved on, and above all, she had become the woman she was always meant to be, strong, free, and unstoppable. They sold my car to bail out my brother, but I sold the house and discovered the only family I truly need is myself.